to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
They did put you
Please note the council's in full attendance. I want to welcome everyone to our February 2nd, 2016 meeting. And first item on our agenda, of course, is our items from council. I have one, but would anyone else like to go first?
I have one too.
Okay. Ms. Elise?
For D2, I don't want to pull it, but I'm going to request that we get a copy of the report showing what the comparison between the last time that they did the study to this one, so that way we know whether it's going up or down, or what's the situation with the air quality.
D2?
Okay? On D2, but I don't want to pull it. I just want to
Okay.
request that, if it could be brought before council, just a copy of that report. Okay, because I think they meet quarterly, and, just as long as we get something, from them. Okay?
What else? I have one item. Let's see, where are we at here? February. So about 4 months ago, I was contacted a couple times regarding, choose my words carefully here, panhandling, and the individuals that we see in the mall area that are standing in the roadway and on the traffic islands asking for money, etc., from our residences. And I was contacted about that, and I wrote my thoughts up on it at that time. And I did talk to staff a little at that time. It's come back up, and some of our citizens have done some of their own self-investigation. Those of you may be aware of that, and that's fine, and shed some light on the situation on certain particular groups of individuals that may be acting, under not honest intentions, or they're taking advantage of the generosity of some of our citizens. It appears that way. So a lot of people contacted me in the last couple of weeks about the issue again. So what I would like to do is, if council would agree, on our next agenda, I would like to have an item where staff would come back with recommendations on how to handle that, and not limited to, but including any ordinance changes. I'm sure the police chief might have some thoughts, and the city manager can work with him and come back and give us options on how to best handle some of the issues in people's dissatisfaction around those people being out there soliciting money. So we'll talk about it at the next meeting. And I know that Corpus Christi recently did an ordinance, and we'll look at that one and some other options. Okay? Is y'all okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. That's the only item I had. Seeing nothing else, we'll move into B2, which is citizens communication. Anybody would like to come forward and talk about any topic at all? And I don't see anyone jumping up, so we'll close citizens communication and move into ordinances.
Item C1 is an ordinance calling for a joint general election with the City of Victoria, Victoria College, Victoria Independent School District, and Drainage District Number 3 on Saturday, May 7th, 2016, for Mayor, City Council, Super District 5, and City Council, Super District 6, establishing procedures for holding the election, designating the precincts and polling places for the election, appointing certain officers to conduct the election, providing for the sharing of expenses, providing for severability, and declaring an effective date. Mayor, we have this posted as an emergency reading, so it will need an affirmative vote of 5 members of council to pass.
And we need a public hearing, correct?
Yes, we do.
We'll open the public hearing on C1 if anyone would like to come forward and speak about this item only. Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing on C1, and I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion we adopt item C1.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion?
Why was the filing earlier than us taking this action?
That's not an unusual situation. Scarlett can talk about
the recommended dates for calling the election are January the 25th through February the 9th. Since we didn't have a meeting, from the 25th, this is the first regular meeting to do that. So.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, passes. C2.
C2 is a public hearing only to receive comment on the proposed annexation of approximately 123.15 acres of land in 2 geographical areas near the edge of the city and its associated service plan.
Okay, public hearing only. So we'll open the public hearing on C2. If anyone would like to come forward and speak about that issue, now's the time. Please come on up and give us your name and address for the record.
My name is B.J. Davis. My address is 410 Iron Gate, Victoria, Texas. I'm here on my behalf of the annexation which y'all are talking about doing on our land. I think we're number 1 or something on your map there. The only thing I'm going to do today is try to, I guess, let you hear my side of the story, but it's more about history than it is about me complaining about going into the city. The city, when we first started back in 2000, the city had required that we have a master plan. And so we developed a master plan and gave it to it. And at that time, the city wanted Ball Airport Road to go straight through our piece of property, right through the middle of it. And I had an engineer, we looked into it, and we came up with the problem with that is because that puts Ball Airport Road really close to where West High School light is there. And you know, during the day, it is bad there. So we talked to the city, and they agreed that we move the road to the outer perimeter of our piece of property, which means that they would have to put a little S-curve into it to get back on Ball Airport Road, but they're fine because they told us they like to have curls in there because it slows people down. All right. So anyway, so we all agreed to that. So that's where the property, my property line ends, and then we donated about roughly 3.5 to 4 acres to the city for Ball Airport Road. Now, when we did that, I asked a question. I said, well, if we do that, when will you expect for me to become part of the city? Because I needed to know because of accounting and what it would cost. So they said that at that time, they said that they would not annex my property as a whole unless they put Ball Airport Road through. Then we would basically be inside. And I said, that's fine. But how long will it be before you do that? And at that time, we were, I think they had Ball Airport Road as number 5 on the list, which means they try to do one a year is what I talked to one of the city council members, and they said, we try to work on one a year to do it. And so that means 5, 6, or 7 years, which is fine. You know, that's all right. But what happened is the fact that I have been doing small pieces at a time, which is normally what a developer does. And whether y'all know it or not, the developers in Victoria are the best promoters of the city that y'all have, because we build the houses that put people in them, which y'all get to take taxes from. So we work with you on that. So, you know, I'm part of the city and I want to stay that way. But the thing of it is that we wound up with all of a sudden here, I think y'all tried to do this one time before, here a few months ago or something like the whole thing. You had a whole loop that you wanted to take care of, and it didn't actually pass. So I don't know. Maybe the strategy is to come back and do one at a time, you know, and pick us off. But the deal is that was the commitment that I had with the city. I have nothing in writing because I believe what they told me, that's what would happen. And it made sense to me. Now, there's a couple other little things, and then I'll sit down. But whenever they got the land to put Ball Airport Road through from me, they said that was great because they wanted to put a drainage ditch down through there to relieve water from coming off of. We're kind of on the lower side of just a small rise. and there's lots of water that comes out of there. Here about a year and a half ago, we had a big rain. I think it was like 14 inches or something like that within a couple hours. Well, all that water come down. Now, it can't go across the railroad track, and we've got the Nursery Drive there. So that in between there is, I don't know, it may be 50 foot or 60 foot, whatever it is. It looked like a canal. I mean, like the Erie Canal, you know, the pictures that I've seen. Anyway, well, what happened was the water built up so much because if you'll notice when you go down further and you get toward Woodway down in there, there's one outlet that goes underneath the railroad track, which is only, I don't know, maybe 3 foot wide. And that's it. That water comes off that hill, and it is unbelievable the amount of water that's there. So what happened was that at that time, I had a call from someone in the city said that I had to increase my storm drainage in my subdivision, which means you're hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I asked him a question that why would I have to increase my drainage whenever I was told I take care of my subdivision and the next person takes care of their subdivision and everybody's happy, all right? Well, what happened was this water come off the hill and they didn't put that drainage ditch through like they said they were going to, and the water came down, it jumped over the street, over Nursery Drive and went into my subdivision, and it flooded one of my streets in there. And it also went into Tropical Acres, and it went over, and it went into Woodway. All of this water just, it just builds up down there. It has no place to go. So anyway, I asked, the question was, why should I have to increase my drainage when it's not my responsibility? And of course, there was no answer because of the fact that we're trying to take care of our water, and we can't take care of what's coming off the hill. And the city is aware of it, and they know about it. So anyway, that's a problem there. But my main thing is I feel like, and I think there's some numbers run that the city, our taxes on that would be somewhere around $3,800, but I think it's going to be more like $6,000. But if it's another 10 years before we get it developed, because I don't know how fast the land's going to develop, you're going to wind up with $60,000 or $70,000, which means that your lots cost more, which means that the houses cost more. So people may go to small. That's why we have so many people that go out and build in the country, is because they don't have to pay city taxes. So I feel like I'm being, not that I'm being picked on, it's just I feel like I'm being betrayed because of the agreement that I had with the city, and we worked everything out. So that's what I have to say.
Quick question, Mr. Davis, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
sir.
Have you met with staff at all regarding this proposal?
I have not
Recently?
said anything. I didn't know if I was supposed to. I have had my attorney meet with a couple of the engineers or the people involved in it. And,
With city staff?
I'm sorry?
I didn't mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you. City staff, have y'all talked with
City
anybody from
staff.
planning?
Yeah,
or-
he's talked to
Okay.
a couple of the people in city staff.
Okay.
But there's nothing, he was just asking questions. I mean, there was no,
Yes, sir.
because we were trying to find out why or what the problem was. On it.
It-
Is Mr. Davis talking about the storm drain issue or the annexation?
I was
Annexation is what I'm talking about, but all of it's tied together.
Okay.
asking, sure,
But
just,
I'm just giving you history of what has happened.
I'm sorry.
I have some more to tell you, but I don't think this is the time to
well,
say.
no, I appreciate you coming and sharing this with us. It's fine. That's what this process is for, and we
That's
don't take
right.
any action tonight. If staff, just a quick question, since we're all here talking about it, the ditches that Mr. Davis is referring to, is that in the city limits or is that county? That's along the railroad track. It's a county?
I'm not sure.
Part of it's city and part of it's county.
Because
And I
we-
think,
Y'all went all the way almost to the water tower.
on that one side
Yeah,
of
on that
Nursery
one
Drive,
side there.
on
Now,
the other
you know.
side where that ditch, and I know you're talking about it, it's kind of
Yeah,
messy.
so I don't know exactly where your city
Yeah.
property is, but the sign says it stops here,
Okay.
is what it is. But there's a problem with the railroad track there doing all of that. But that's a secondary problem,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I understand.
But it was kind of all tied together.
I'll be glad to come back with a report. I can take the tape and analyze everything Mr. Davis said, and we can come back and
That's fine.
report and say,
Right.
this is what's happened. So.
Okay.
But this
Great.
is my first time of saying anything.
Okay.
Because I thought I should come here first before we did any, or talked about, or talked to someone else. Maybe y'all can instruct me someone to talk to.
Okay.
Give me some information. I'd be
Well-
glad to do that with you.
Staff will follow up, and I want you to know one thing. I know you've been a builder a long time, and we very much appreciate the work you do.
Right?
Those neighborhoods are beautiful that you've done. So, and I think all the council would agree with that. So,
Well, I thank you for that, but I also think that the city of Victoria is my home. I was born and raised here, and I want to make sure that we keep it up, and y'all have you have enough taxes in order to do that. All right?
Mr. Davis,
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming. If you have other issues, this is what a public hearing is for, to bring up those issues
All right.
in public for everyone to hear. And so don't hold back if you have additional to tell us about.
Well, I have one more thing that maybe I can bring up if you permit me to do it. Whenever we started a subdivision, the city came in and said that I had to have an oversized line as far as sewer is concerned, enlarged, on that. And engineer said we only needed, I think, like 8-inch or whatever to hook into the line that is right at the end of Tropical Acres there. So what happened, they said, no, you can't do it. You've got to put in a 16-inch line, I think, or 12-inch, 16, somewhere along in there, line in there. Well, that cost about $60,000 more for the oversized part of it, not for the 8-inch size. So what happened was, I asked them, I said, well, what do I do? How do I collect, the city to pay their part? They said, no, you got to wait 3 years, and then if anybody pays on it, well, then that money will go toward you, and we'll make up the difference. I said, okay. Well, 3.5 years, I haven't received anything. So I asked them about it, and they said, oh, no, you were supposed to have done that before we even started. But petition the city to get your money back. That's wrong. That oversized line is not my responsibility.
well, I
paid
remember
for
that
my
agreement,
part.
but I don't know that detail. I remember when we voted on
Well,
it here.
It's pretty obvious
that we
it's an
would cover
oversized line.
Yeah, that's a common procedure that
Right.
if we request that, we cover the additional expense.
That is correct.
The idea being that we expect development on the far side of the property.
Right.
If the gentleman will oversize it, we'll pay the difference, because then it would make
let's-
it where it could be hooked up.
We'll let staff follow up with you regarding
All right.
that and get back to us. I
That'll be
appreciate it.
fine.
Okay.
That'll be fine. But other than that, I'm happy.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So this is the public hearing on C2 is still open if anyone else would like to add anything to that. If not, I'll close the public hearing and we'll move into the consent agenda.
There are 3 items on the consent agenda tonight that will be approved by a single vote. They are, first, the approval of minutes of the regular meeting of January 19th, 2016. Second, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement with the University of Texas at Austin for activities associated with the city's grant with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality for air quality research in the amount of $72,000 to be funded by the grant, and declaring an effective date. And the third is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with CDM Smith Incorporated for engineering services related to the construction of a pump station at Tower Number 5 in the amount of $269,693 and declaring an effective date.
Council?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Resolutions.
Item E1 is a resolution authorizing the Texas Coalition for Affordable Power Incorporated to negotiate an electric supply agreement for 5 years for deliveries of electricity effective January 1st, 2018, authorizing TCAP to act as an agent on behalf of the city to enter into a contract for electricity, authorizing the mayor or the city manager or the assistant city manager to execute an electric supply agreement for deliveries of electricity effective January 1st, 2018, and committing to the budget for energy purchases in 2018 through 2022, and to honor the city's commitment to purchase power for its electrical needs in 2018 through 2022 through TCAP, and declaring an effective date.
I move to adopt.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hibbert, amount of expenditure, the $3.1 million, that's just for the fiscal year 2015?
Where you at, ma'am? I'm sorry.
It doesn't have a number, but it's on the
Oh,
E1. Okay.
the amount, yeah, that's 15.
Okay, so these guys are just middle people, right? The middleman?
No.
This is the actual electricity that we're
Yeah.
paying?
What
For
we're
the whole
doing here
city?
tonight, let me go through my
Okay.
quick presentation, maybe cover some of the questions and where we are now and where we're going to be at hopefully in a few years.
Okay.
Tonight, as Thomas was talking about, we're considering a 5-year contract. Current contract expires December 31st, 2017. This contract would take us from January 2018 through December 22. So why are we doing this now? Well, as you recall, as everybody know, natural gas prices are way low, historical time low. So at that point in time, you want to try to capitalize ahead of time. This will allow the suppliers. Supplier is the actual individual who's generating electricity to sell to us. We are a member of TCAP. We have the purchasing power that the big kilowatts that we can go directly to the producer and buy directly from that individual or company. As to like me or you, we have reps. We have to go through them. They're the middle persons. We don't have middle persons. We go directly to the producer of energy. So in this case, what we're doing is allow the supplier to go into the market within the next few months to acquire future natural gas price contracts over the next 5 years from January through December, which he's locked in at that price, and he's able to sell us natural gas. We have a benchmark right now of 4.25, but currently, I will show you a graph in a minute, that we expect that to be around 4 cents or practically a little less than 4 cents. That's over close to half what we're paying right now. As my CN1 acknowledged that you're looking at a minimum of $1 million in 2018, easy. Qualifying depends on capacity that we add during this time for the next few years. Okay? Does that answer that question?
Yes.
Okay. I have a video that I would like to present, if you allow me, that kind of gives you a recap of why we're doing this resolution right now. It might explain some things. After the video, I'd like to present a graph which eliminates the natural gas prices and give you a little quick history and where we're going in the future, if that's okay with council.
Unlike run-of-the-mill, for-profit electric companies, the Texas Coalition for Affordable Power is not simply selling a product. TCAP has a much larger mission. We're about empowering cities, figuratively and literally, with bulk purchasing power, transparent governance, and with legislative advocacy. Combine these features with access to consultants and demand reduction programs, and TCAP is truly a one-stop shop for your energy needs. We are owned and operated by cities and political subdivisions, members like you that have joined the coalition, which is why member interests always come first. Through the strength of numbers, members have saved tens of millions of dollars over the years, and in 2016, you'll get a chance to sign on for even more savings. Our current supply contract is expiring in 2017, and we're working hard to finalize a new one. Your political subdivision will be called upon to pass a resolution to authorize this new contract. We'll explain more about that later. But first, let's talk about some great new supply options TCAP members will have to choose from. In previous years, all TCAP members received full requirements contracts, which have a locked-in, single, unchanging price for electricity. That price was the same regardless of when the electricity was used. The benefit of full requirements contracts is that they provide great budget stability, are straightforward, easy to understand, and therefore will remain one of the options available to you. Under a new option, which we'll call Option 2, you can get your electricity under a fixed price full requirements contract for peak usage hours and spot market pricing during off-peak hours. The advantage of this option is the potential savings over a simple full requirements contract. That's because spot market prices during off-peak hours are generally relatively low. The disadvantage is that spot market prices, whether on-peak or off-peak, can fluctuate. That means the anticipated savings is not guaranteed, and both savings and your price may vary over time. While your TCAP consultants will make arrangements to limit the month-to-month variability, you should still expect some fluctuation in your city's power bill, should you select this option. Option 3 incorporates some 24/7 fixed-price block energy, which is some of the cheapest energy on the market. To get the best prices for this block power, TCAP has to buy large quantities of it, which is something that we can do because we aggregate the loads of our entire membership. However, this option is structured in such a way that only a portion of our power needs are met with block power. That's because under block power deals, TCAP has to take the power whether it's needed or not, and we don't want to buy too much. So to fill in the gaps, this option will include some off-peak, spot market energy, and fixed but reasonably priced renewable power. This option offers the possibility of even more savings over the other two, but the savings is not guaranteed, and there's still pricing volatility.
No, that's not the end, but skip. Can you skip over it and hit it right there? Okay. We can pass on that right now. But basically, we're giving you kind of a recap what I had in CM1. Let's talk about the graph real quick. It is a good presentation. We spent some money on that thing. But anyway, what you have before you right now is the natural gas future prices. On the left-hand side, I got the historical data. On the right-hand side, prices are the future. Those future prices were done about a week and a half ago. And a quick point. I went today about 2 o'clock and update the future prices. And after the officer hands out the graph, you're going to notice that you don't have those little, let me see if I can do this right without messing up. Those little bumps in the road, they kind of level out a little bit, meaning that gas prices have kind of declined a little bit in the future. And you can see it on the far hand right if you look at that graph versus what I just handed out there. So in other words, we're still on course, and we still have an opportunity to get into it. That's why right now we're thinking that 4.25 might be a little less right now. Moving on, quick history. At the beginning of the years, before deregulation, we were in STAP. It's an organization in South Texas for the cities. We averaged about a 4 cents a kilowatt per hour. Then we went back, the same organization. We look at the history of what we're doing right now. We saw those spikes. We thought we'd get in the market again to get in the contract locked in for another, I think this one's a little longer than 5 years. I believe it's, can't see, but 9 cents. And then, of course, you see it towards the end of the spike in the fall of 2008. We decided, okay, contracts, it's about the term ends here. We want to negotiate a new contract, so we came in here, negotiated a contract. We got about 7.5. 7.8. Thank you very much. And of course, as you can tell, that decline spike right there. Well, it's not the whole thing. Just that drop. That's Eagle Ford Shale. We're oversupply on natural gas and everything else. Well, we didn't know that was coming down the pipe, but at that time we decided to merge with CAP, which is an organization from the north side, a bunch of cities from the north. We just merged together. Why? We thought we'd put our powers together and get a better deal. And of course, we went from a 7.8 down to 7, and then the last few years we're at 7.5. Now, we're at that little circle. That's where we're at right now. You can see natural gas prices. It's kind of mimicking what it was back in '97. So we have an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to enter a contract for 5 years at a low cost that will be effective January 8, 2018. Those savings will not come into play to 18, of course, but you want to do it now. You want to lock in those prices so you have those savings in the future. That's the bottom line. I think it's a good deal. I think Council hopefully will approve that so we can move forward with that. Now, option 1, 2, and 3, I've recommended to City Manager option 1. About 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago, you would consider option the solar and the spot. However, if you can tell with the future gas price, it's down so low that future market and spot market, it'd probably be higher than your fixed, so you're really not capitalizing anything. You probably lose more than anything else. So I suggest maybe 1, let's take our savings and we'll be done with that. Now, in the future, a year from now, 2 years, we are having there's a portion of the contract that we negotiated with them that if we want to do some renewable energy, that's possible, solar, but at a lower volume cost. I mean, a lower kilowatts usage, so it won't distort everything else. But I think it's a win-win situation for the council and citizens of Victoria. I don't think we're going to see this. If you can make some quick assumptions over the next 2 years, those rates will go up. So right now, as Ms. Solis said, last year we spent about $3.2 million in just electricity costs. Doing quick math on that, if you do something like this, you're looking at, I did a range from 1 to 1.4. The reason why depends on if you add, we got a plant coming online, so that's going to take up a little bit of it. But on the high end, easy 1.4. Plant comes in, you might see a little reduction there. That's my story.
So you're recommending option number one?
We are recommending to staff option number 1.
And that's the one that has less volatility in the price?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Due to the fact that the price is so low, might as well go with that.
So Gilbert, I remember the STAP. So they merged. Where's this new entity headquartered? Where's TCAP at?
Right now, it's in Dallas.
How do they govern? Do they have a board? I know state
We have a
law
board,
allows
12. I'm on a board member.
You're a board member?
Yeah.
How many board members?
I'm a
are
treasurer of the TCAP as well. There's 12, and we do an election. There's different zones in the state of Texas on the electrical portion of the grid. And we made the election where everybody is represented. We got large representation, and we make sure there's a medium and a small representation on the board too as well. So everybody has a voice on that. Now, given the fact since there's different zones, not every zone will get the same prize.
How many municipalities do you know off the top of your hand?
There are 170 as of last week.
Good. So they pick from the municipalities with respect to the board, and then
Yeah.
Okay.
We like nothing against schools and like that, but just that on cities, our usage kind of almost mimics each other because after 5 o'clock, your lights goes on, street lights. That's a huge load. So we try to capitalize on that. Schools just have a certain block.
Peak
They got
peak
their own.
hours.
Yeah. So altogether, we got about 1.5 billion kilowatts hours together. So that's a lot.
We've been a member, we were one of the original members of staff when it was formed. David Smith, the former city attorney, was on the board.
David Smith.
And then Gilbert took over after.
And the second time around. He was there the first contract, came over the second contract, and then we merged.
Very good.
I think I remember voting on when Gilbert was going to be on it because he was going to be one of the members on the board. Yeah.
They're pretty active. We got our energy consultants. Of course, we have lawyers. And so it's a pretty good group to work with. We get a lot of input. We got a lot of city managers, attorneys. God, we got attorneys.
Thanks, Gilbert.
Like, everybody has an opinion.
I know.
They're not consistent either.
That's quite all right.
Okay. Any further questions on E1?
One question. Tonight, we are voting on authorizing you to go ahead and work with them. Are we also authorizing which option? Are we voting on an option
Yeah.
tonight?
You're authorizing, let me just repeat it, you're authorizing, basically what you're doing, City of Victoria, TCAP, you're okay to go out there and negotiate for us a contract, enter into a 5-year contract with the stipulation that we want option 1 with a benchmark of 4.25, and that would end in June. But we expect this contract to be sometime completed by March. As you can tell, there's 3 names in that resolution, just in case somebody's absent. We only have 24 hours, actually a little less than 24 hours. Reality is 24, but the market closed. Those prices has changed. So when the supplier calls, this is the price. You accept it, yes, and then we don't fax it. We sign, and it's locked in.
I've done the same thing for my business. I didn't get this rate. Okay.
Well, let me just add one more thing, because there's a lot of people probably listen to it. Well, that's not your total bill. Of course it's not the total bill, because you got transmission and distribution line. That is a given. But everybody has that. That's not controlled by us, not controlled by a rep. That's just regulated by ERCOT and the state. That's all it is to it. So you can tack that on top of that. Then you got your PUC ERCOT regulation. You can add that to it. That's just a fixed percentage, so we don't have no control of that. So the only variable you have here to reduce any type of cost, of course, is that electrical cost per kilowatt that we can control or reduce your usage.
Okay. No further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item E2 is a resolution approving and adopting the City of Victoria's investment policy and the list of qualified brokers who are authorized to engage in investment transactions for the City of Victoria and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, E2 passes.
E3 is a resolution granting variances to Section 10-115 and 13-27 of the Victoria City Code, which prohibit a person from installing a septic tank within 1 mile of an existing city sewer service main for a 7.88 acre tract of land located at 6202 U.S. Highway 59 North, owned by American Freightways Corporation doing business as FedEx, and declaring an effective date.
Make a motion to approve item E3.
Second.
Motion second. Mr. Short, did you want to?
Well, I would just say that, this variance would allow FedEx to replace their existing septic system, which is failing at the moment, at 6202 US 59 North. Staff recommends approval of the variance conditioned upon, of course, the septic system being approved and permitted by the Victoria County Health Department, and furthermore, that in the event that sanitary sewer mains are installed adjacent to the property, or if the property is subdivided or further developed, the current owner would be required to connect to the new mains. And I'll answer any questions you might have.
I'd just like to say, Mr. Short, I appreciate those conditions. Those were some of my concerns when I was reading this, and I appreciated you thinking about that.
Mr. Short, this was an older style system that was failing with the drain fields and not.
That's correct.
Close to modern style with the sprinklers.
That's correct, and that was part of our reason for recommending the variance, is that there was a septic system there, it's failing, a better one's going in its place. There are no sanitary sewer mains anywhere near, and so we think this will yield a better than what we had.
Net improvement, yeah. Okay.
So this letter satisfies the question about the FedEx variance request?
Well, that is they submitted the email, I believe was sent to you earlier today. That came in late and did not get in the packet.
Well, I didn't have the question, but apparently somebody did.
Well, the variance request, it states in there that there's a letter attached to it, and that's the letter.
Okay. No further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you.
Item E4 is a resolution rejecting the bid submitted by Coastal Marine Concepts Incorporated for the 2015-16 street sweeping project and awarding the project to Champion Infrastructure Incorporated of Salado, Texas, based on their more advantageous bid of $200 per curb mile, authorizing the Director of Public Works to execute change order number 1 to reduce the scope of the project by eliminating 1,090.5 curb miles of sweeping from the project, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract for the work in the amount of $400,000 and declaring an effective date.
I move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Other questions about this?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We are reducing 1,090.5 curb miles. Of those, how is it going to affect us? Did the other contract not do those, so we're still going to get actually the same amount of work out of the contract?
If this contractor performs to the contractual language, we will get more work out because the prior contract did not live up to his contractual obligation.
That's what I'm saying. So okay, I see what you're
Still
saying.
going to be better
As long
off.
as our miles are going to be equal
It
to
should
what
be better.
better, okay,
The service should be.
okay. But they haven't started yet, right?
Well, I want to thank staff because I did complain a lot, not in these meetings, but outside these meetings about the process, and I appreciate y'all taking care of it and doing what you're doing, because I didn't think we were doing a good job or getting the job done by this contractor, so I'm glad.
Yeah,
to see
because I was
this.
on the verge of calling one day. George and I were driving, and he goes, if it was us, then we would be hearing about it,
Well,
so,
The city manager knows full well. I've been giving her a hard time for a while.
yeah. So I figured y'all had, so I figured, no, I'll just
Thank
let it
you.
go, George. We'll take care of it.
I'm used to it.
Oh, no, come on, not that bad.
It's not bad at all.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate it. very much.
Quick question, what are we cutting? What are we eliminating? What does that represent?
Basically, it will
thousand?
reduce the residential street sweepings that were originally in the bid packet from 4 times per year to 2 times per year. And it will reduce the thoroughfares, the non-state highway thoroughfares, from 6 times a year to 4 times a year. That is still much improved over what was actually done last year.
We're adding the neighborhoods.
That's right, because very little of the neighborhoods were actually done last year.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And when will this take effect?
We'll have to get the contract fully executed. That depends on how long it'll take the contractor to submit all the documents and insurance requirements and everything. But I would think, within 60 days probably, I would hope.
Thank you.
Look forward to it. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Item E5 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to pay a settlement on a penalty of $1,250 for damage prevention docket number 044860 to the Railroad Commission of Texas. Execute all documents necessary to complete this settlement within the specified deadline and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. A well-written CM1 with photos. Is there any questions for Mr. Short?
Just one.
Okay.
The damage was only to the railroad, it was nothing in the neighborhood.
That's correct. It was a 1-inch natural gas service drop at that Algie Street address. We were repairing a water break. It exposed it, but there was a lot of water and mud there. The employee put the backhoe bucket back down there to take some of that mud and water out of the hole and caught the 1-inch service drop. And so we had to, of course, notify CenterPoint Energy. They came and made the repair, but they dug they used a machine within 2 foot of that line, and that is the Railroad Commission.
So there was no damage to any of the property?
Oh, no,
besides the line?
no.
Okay.
It happens. Okay. No further questions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. All right, city manager reports.
First report up is floodplain map revisions, and John Johnston is going to present that. You may remember in the last meeting you had a white paper that Mr. Johnson had written. We've got extra copies here. I see somebody, if anybody needs one for tonight. Okay. Before John starts speaking, our goal tonight is, after this presentation, to see if we can get a consensus from council to bring back an ordinance to adopt for regulation purposes the floodplain map. So if you'll keep that in mind as we're going through.
Good evening, mayors, members of council. Tonight I wanted to provide you a status report of the map modernization project that FEMA started in 2006. I want to give you a quick history, talk about some delays that we ran across through this process, maybe even tour some of the changes on the map. I have some digital versions that I can show you different areas where the maps are changing. Talk about some recommendations we have for you, and discuss some pros and cons about that. That's in my memo, excuse me. Here we go. Okay, first of all, the project began in April 2006. It was a presidential initiative to take paper floodplain maps and convert them to a digital format. They were also going to use higher quality topographic information that was not available when the maps were first produced, that would more accurately depict the properties that were affected by the floodplain. We started this project and realized that it wasn't going to remodel any of the floodplain maps in the city or the Guadalupe River. It was just taking existing models and changing those to digital format. We'd experienced the flood of record in '98. We had another flood in 2002 that was close or equal to the 1% flood. And then we had another flood in 2004. So we had 3 recent floods. And then our discussion with them is, you're not going to restudy the Guadalupe River and provide us better maps for the Guadalupe River. So the GBRA and the city entered into agreement to hire USGS to come up with some probability analysis of the 1% flood on the Guadalupe River. And then FEMA would take some cost savings that they enjoyed by us providing them GIS data for centerline roadways and other information that they didn't have to expend and go out and collect that data. So they restudied the Guadalupe River, came up with a map, and then during that process, they were also dealing with the surge model. The county of Victoria is considered a coastal county because there's a short, several miles frontage on the Lavaca Bay. So in FEMA's eyes, we're viewed as a coastal community. So there were surge models developed, and a surge model is a model that FEMA runs to mimic the run-up wave from a hurricane onto land. And they were having problems with that model. They thought they were finished with it. They wanted to test out the model. So when Ike came on land in 2008, they deployed a bunch of sensors out in the areas that the Ike was making landfall. And they realized that the surge model was not as accurate as they first thought. So they had to go back to the drawing board, which delayed the release of our maps because of that reinvestigation. Well, 3 years before that, Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana, had a bunch of levee failures, and there was a whole bunch of discussion going on about the safety of levees, the quality of maintenance of levees, how levees were constructed. So all this was going on in the background while they were dealing with this surge model issue. They got through the surge model and got confident that that model was good. And then the Katrina issues came up with the levee systems. And they put together a group of experts across the nation on how to deal with the certification of levees, how levees are constructed, and how you document that and keep them in good form. And their guidance came out in 2013. A group of us got together because the county does have a levee system down by the navigation district, the Port of Victoria. So the City of Victoria, county representatives from the navigation district, FEMA, and their contractor all got together in a LAMP team. And it's a levee assessment and mapping. I can't remember there's so many acronyms when you deal with FEMA. But it's a LAMP team. So the LAMP team got together and we began to develop what it was going to take to certify the levee and what impact that would have on the floodplain areas in the port, in and around the port. They came up with a result of map, and there were some issues that the port had some on how it was depicted. The port is pursuing that with their engineer and their senator and representative from our area. They had a meeting last week. I've got briefed on that meeting, but I know that they haven't briefed the port yet. So I'll attend the port meeting, hear what the briefing was, but that's just to say it's delayed. It's unlikely that there'll be a quick resolution to this levee issue. FEMA has told us, the city, that we cannot adopt the panels of the floodplain maps that only affect the city. It's got to be a county-wide adoption of these maps. So there's a lot of good information on the city maps that they've produced, and those were released in 2010. Typically what I do when I sit down with the resident to discuss with them about the floodplain requirements is I'll show them the existing effective city floodplain maps, and I'll tell them this is what you're required to do. However, in about 12 to 24 months, there's going to be new maps that come out, and they're going to look very similar to this. And I would highly recommend that you build to this standard so that when the maps are adopted, you will be in compliance from then on until the maps change again. But some people take my advice, some do not. One of the recommendation we have for you is to consider allowing us to adopt the 2010 maps, particularly along the Guadalupe River, as regulatory maps. That will allow us to apply those new maps to citizens that come into our area and want to develop, and know that they're going to be in compliance when and if the maps ever are adopted and the levy issue is settled and we can move forward. I have some digital version that's published by FEMA. It's a risk map 6, Victoria, Texas. I can show you what the existing maps are today. I can also show you what the proposed 2010 maps will be. Now there's some pros and cons in this. And I've got those listed in my memo. The pros are, it's the best available data we have on the Guadalupe River. The flows of the current effective maps that we have in the Guadalupe River modeled 126,000 CFS, cubic feet per second of water flowing through the Guadalupe River. When GBRA restudied, or USGS restudied that, they modified that 1% flow to 196,000 CFS. So it almost doubled the flow, which was what we were seeing in the field when we had these inundation areas. So this is what I believe the best available data on the Guadalupe River, and I would suggest that we use that for our regulatory purpose. It's not going to affect their insurance until the maps are adopted by FEMA and become the firm maps, the flood insurance rate maps. But we can at least prepare people so that when they do build in those areas, that they will be in compliance with the future maps. Okay? The other positive things, in our recommendation, we also suggest that if we do adopt these as regulatory maps, and you approve that we not make it part of our flood damage prevention ordinance. The flood damage prevention ordinance is required by participating cities in the National Flood Insurance Program to adopt these ordinances, and FEMA has to approve them. Anytime we modify those maps, anytime we approve a variance to those requirements, we have to report that back to FEMA, and then that brings scrutiny under our program. We've been through while I was here at the city, we've been through 3 community assistance visits from FEMA, and that's basically an audit of how you do your floodplain management. We had one in 99, right after the 98 flood. We had one in 2006, and we had one in 2012. So they do these periodic evaluations of member cities for how they administer their flood insurance program. If you adopt these maps as regulatory in a development ordinance, for example, you and the Planning Commission can consider variances to that and not report those to FEMA because they're not part of the National Flood Insurance Program ordinance you're required to pass to be a member. So it gives you flexibility. The other thing that it does, in my opinion, is it gives the community a longer time to look and hash out the issues of the map. When FEMA does publish these maps, you'll have a series of public hearings. There'll be a 90-day review period where people can communicate their protests and appeals to the maps. Then FEMA has a period of time that they have to respond to all those appeals and protests. And once they've responded to those appeals and protests and settled them, then they establish an effective date, which is 6 months after that end of the appeals and protest period. So it's a shorter time frame. If today FEMA came out and said we want to adopt these maps, we would have it'd be 12 months before the new maps would be effective. If we adopt these maps as regulatory now and start using them, then we'll hash out some of those known problems in the map even before FEMA says, okay, now we're going to start the appeals and protest period. Does that make sense? Okay.
John, I would think you made a comment about the not affecting insurance. I think it would beneficially affect, because if they build in an area now, it suddenly becomes in a floodplain after the new maps are adopted. If we can prevent that, because otherwise it would adversely affect insurance rates over the long term for a structure or a property. So I would say that it's a good thing regarding that.
Well, what they're going to be rated on insurance, they could build, let's say, for example, we have changes in our floodplain map anywhere from 18 to 3 feet along the Guadalupe Basin. So if you have a home that builds 3 feet above now, they're going to reap the benefits until the maps are adopted and brings up the base flood elevation, because they're 3 foot above the existing effective maps.
Right.
So there's some positive aspects of that too. Yes.
How does this affect Riverside Park? I saw the preliminaries back a few years ago of what was proposed, and it looked like a larger portion of Riverside Park was going to be in a floodplain and floodway.
Yes, sir. James, what do I? Up here at 4 o'clock today to make sure that
And it worked well then, didn't it?
Okay, let me open this up a little bit. All right, this is the current map. I'm sorry, I've got some other. Let me turn this off. This is a current map of Riverside Park. If I can, this area here is the water treatment plant. This is the Riverside Golf Course. Down here you get to the old convention center, Texas Zoo, the pump house down in this area. The dark area is floodway. And floodway is the most restrictive part of the floodplain to develop in. The flood fringe is this area out here, which is, most of our community has flood fringe in it. We do have some floodway. And these lines through here are called the base flood elevation. That's the elevation of the 1% flood in that area. You have 65 in this point, 66, 67 up near the plant before you go up the bluff by the parks office. Okay? Now let me turn on the okay, so you can see, let me okay, this is the existing map. This is a proposed map. You can see this little swath through here is added floodway through the park. That's a convention center. That's Texas Zoo. Pump house is still elevated above the floodplain. The area that's planned for, this is the old Little League fields. It's out in both maps. So it's a significant change in Riverside Park of the floodway and the flood elevations. You can see 66 was the old elevation, 68 is the new elevation, 69, 70 compared to 67. So this is a 3-foot increase through this area through here. We can go south and look at some other areas. Let's see if I can. This is the old landfill. Actually, some of the landfill came up out of the floodplain on the new maps because of the fill. And again, this has to do with higher quality topographic information that they used in developing these new maps compared to the technology they had available in 85, 87 when these maps were published. You can go further south. Here's the AEP, or the electric plant, the old AEP electric plant. That's the existing. That's the new. There's little change in floodway, but the elevations do change from about a foot from 54 to 55 through here. So there is some changes through there. And this is a tool of the project. It was intended to digitize these maps. It'll make staff more efficient when they're identifying properties located in the floodplain. We can easily incorporate that. Currently, our floodplain maps on our GIS system use the paper maps scanned in and approximated as close as we could, but there were some misalignments of, let me see. This is Magruder, Spring Creek. You can see that those creek lines run here and the floodplain is running here on these maps. That's because of the error of the paper maps and the digital maps. So the digital maps are very useful. Let me see if I can find that same area. Anyway, so there are some changes in this area too. Very little. Okay, to talk about the cons of this project, for you to consider this recommendation, there are cons associated with it. The cons are you adopt these as regulatory maps, the base flood elevation is going to be applied 18 to 3 feet higher in some areas. And that could impact individuals in a negative way. But if you look at it in the long term, you're actually helping them because they're building to protect their family and their property out of harm's way. The public meetings, the cons, if you don't, see, why did I write this? Cons. Oh, the cons are the public doesn't have a comment period. They don't have an ability to comment and question this. But if you draft it in the ordinance that there is a way for them to appeal a variance, then you have that ability to consider those. So That would be a con, in my opinion, adopting the maps without public input.
And of course, if they appeal, that's their own peril. At their own peril. Okay. Yeah, I understand.
And then you'll basically have this political subdivision line where the city floodplain occurs here on this side of the city limit line outside. It's going to be the effective maps of the county. So we may need to consider applying those to ETJ subdivision developments that we have, the new maps that we have control of through our agreement with the county.
John?
Yes,
When we first started looking at this about 2010, wasn't it?
2006. You probably got a report in about 2010.
Yeah,
We
well,
started in
I've been here
2006.
since 04. I remember it's only be a couple of years. It's going to be a couple of years.
Yes. Yes.
And it's been a large number of years. Is
Yeah.
there some particular reason that has caused so much longer? Seems like we could have more data now than we ever had.
Yes, the delays had to do with the surge model issues, and also now that we're dealing with the levee issues and the FEMA not allowing the city to just adopt the panels that affect our city. We have to adopt the countywide, so we have to settle the issue with the levee before FEMA will allow these countywide maps to be adopted.
It could be just an earthworks that has no strength to it, or it could be properly built. Is that what they're getting at? They don't know?
Well, the problems that they had with Katrina levee failures, problems that they had with the Missouri River levee failures, or Mississippi River levee failures, and also out in California. This became a big hot topic after the Hurricane Katrina. And so they're really scrutinizing what their maps show, and does the levees that they show on the map really protect it to the level that they can insure? Because these are just insurance maps.
I would say bring it back for us to approve.
The question is the potential for how many variances could we anticipate on an annual basis? Because it's easy to say, well, they can just come back for a variance. Well, if they start lining up.
Well, you're talking about, let me ask to piggyback on that. You're talking about a variance on someone who's right on the cusp from the old map to the new map in that line, and they want to build something. That's when they would come in here and say, well, I dispute the line.
The variance that I would anticipate is that somebody builds in the Old Town area, for example, and the current effective floodplain map shows an elevation of 60. The new floodplain maps that you will adopt as regulatory may be at 65. And all we're required to by FEMA is to hold it to that minimum effective maps. We won't have to require them to meet the new maps until they're adopted. But we can adopt the maps, the community of Victoria can adopt them as regulatory purposes and require permits to be built to that new elevation so that when the maps are officially adopted by FEMA, those homes will already be in compliant with the new maps.
So, if I may, Mr. Mayfield, how many would you see happening? In your expert opinion, if that's your question, right, Mr. Alvarez?
Oh, absolutely, because
I think we don't do that many floodplain permits a year.
Yes,
Well, we probably do.
How many? We probably do 3 or 4 a week. For
Okay.
new homes, that's different. Remodeling, do 3 or 4. New construction, new homes, we probably have 2 or 3 a month, maybe at the most.
That's what it'd be on new homes, not remodeling. They're already there.
There's no way to guess how many variances we would have. Obviously, the variance is just going to be difference between the two maps. So we haven't really fully crafted the ordinance language yet. So tonight we just wanted to find out if you're willing to let us bring something to you, and so that we can share the benefit of these new maps.
Look at it this way. Do we want to be honest with our citizens? And tell them we have better information and you really ought to build to it? I would think we would. I'm sorry. I would want to know if I'm going to invest in a piece of property, I want to know what I'm looking at in the future. and I want to have the most accurate information. If you're going to tell me that the data shows it's more risk by a few feet, I want to know, especially if I'm going to make a decision to buy that property. I'm just saying. So
When John and Jared brought this to me, that was my question. So what we're doing here is basically providing the public with better information so when they're making those decisions, they know the risk that they're taking. And we have that, but it's not FEMA approved, so it's not required. So, and that's kind of, to me, where we're at.
But if I was building a structure new, it's going to be costly no matter what you do new, and they didn't tell me that I was going to be 2 foot under, I wouldn't be happy about that. And if they had
I'm
that
not worried about the new
information-
structures.
Well, it meets the current standards.
Grandfather the old structures when I want to rehab or rebuild.
And periodically they get flooded.
If I might
I think we
add,
all know what happens. We were here in 98.
To me, I look at it more as we've got information. Should we be providing
Oh,
it
I
to the
agree.
public?
I agree. I'm not challenging that. I'm just saying, are we going to be flooded with a bunch of variance requests? It was a simple question. And, maybe staff can look into that.
if I might add, the hope is that we, of course, would not have any variances, but I anticipate the areas where we do have variances is where there's a greater change in the BFE. So in an area where you have a minor change in the BFE, maybe a foot, it's not as obviously a big a deal to build up, whereas in certain areas where you
Well,
have
you're saying
change
18
about
from
5 feet or 3
from
feet.
3 to 18 feet. 18 feet is quite substantial.
Inches. 18 inches.
18.
Oh, inches. I'm sorry.
18 inches.
Well,
So
that's
I
foot and a
think
half to
in
3
the
foot.
areas,
Okay, thank you. I'm like 18 feet.
in the areas where the BFE changes the most, that's where I would anticipate you would see your variances. If it's a small increase in the BFE, then is it really that big
Right.
hardship
Okay,
to
thank you.
add that?
Well, somebody needs to put, it says
It's not
18,
inches. It says inches.
18 inches to 3 feet.
okay, so we're in agreement. I think. I understand.
3 feet is still pretty substantial.
We're in agreement. I think.
Is there any way you can predict how long the lamp project will take? No.
Let's just put it this way: the federal government's involved.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe it's
The
taking
new
this long to
president
get
will
these
be
maps out.
requesting new floodplain maps, probably.
They joke with me at the LAMP. They call me the project whip because I want to get this thing through and passed, and they do too. But they want a reasonable map, and I agree with them. It needs to be a reasonable map that shows reasonable risk.
Is there any way
It
to
was built to
validate
current
this
federal
with
standards.
the footage that was taken during the flood this year?
Yes, we have. Actually, we've flown. The chief had a fireman fly some videos for us, so it's very, very good information.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll work on an ordinance to bring back. Thank you, John.
Good letter. By the way, good description.
So the last city manager report is Tony, and the purpose for tonight's report was to talk about marketing plans and where he's going. I'm sure there's some questions on the decrease in revenues, but we'll also try to answer those too.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Okay. So we're going to go over the marketing plan first, and then we'll dig into our quarter one results. And of course, at any point, if you have questions, just let me know. To jump right in here, get a couple slides talking about our kind of an executive summary on what's going on in the industry and where we're headed right now. We are in a good position. I mean, I don't really need to tell you guys that. The city is a great city, and it has a lot of opportunities for people to do things here. There are a lot of leisure opportunities and a lot of things people can come into town for. But being realistic, you're seeing the declining hotel rates. You know, that helps us when we're talking about bringing in a conference or a sporting event. It's easy to get those attendees here compared to a city that charges them 3 times as much. But obviously that has an impact on our businesses that are actually, dependent on that incoming revenue. So what our overall plan for the rest of the year here is to continue to refresh the branding and marketing of Victoria, so to reflect how great our city is out in the eyes of the public in Houston, San Antonio, and different areas. We're going to be working on making that a little bit more modern and a little bit more reflective of what we have here in our community, as well as pivoting our marketing towards digital and away from the print ads. This does include how we market to potential attendees. So, for instance, today I was talking to the person that puts on our sporting events. Parks and Rec does a great job of getting these tournaments into town, and we want to help to do everything we can to get as many attendees to these tournaments as possible. And part of that includes exciting those attendees, the families, about the different opportunities to recreate in town while they're here for a tournament. So our goals for fiscal year 2016, we want to see 140,000 unique visitors on all of our online websites. We want to see over 13 million people reached from our social properties. And we want to see 8 million native impressions. I'm going to dig deeper into what all that means in just a moment. These are measurables that we can attain, but through hard work. And these are easily a significant increase over anything we've ever done before in terms of getting in front of just sheer numbers of people.
Tony?
Yes.
A social property. That's a new term for me.
Sure, and by that I mean
Facebook.
You've got it. Yep, that's Facebook for us. Instagram is a large growing one. We're looking at different ways also to get in front of the audience. It's the below 25 since they're not really using Facebook anymore.
Wait. Say that again? Below
25 and younger. Facebook's old school. Yeah, I know. Think that one up for a second, right? Because mom and dad and their friends are on it. They don't want to be there.
What are they using then?
Snapchat's the big
What's it
one,
called?
but we're a city and we can't use that. Yeah.
Yeah, come get with it, Mr. Albert.
I'm still trying to learn Facebook. Are you?
But lucky for us, Facebook still hits the audiences that have money to spend. So a little easier on us right now. So let's talk about the market situation. Where are we at right now? You've heard a lot in the news over the last couple of days about where the market is in terms of our hotels. As you can see on the right, on this graph on the screen right now, our occupancy, we're down right now to about 42% occupancy. So that means the hotel, if you have 100 rooms in it, 42 of those rooms are taken throughout the year, basically. It's not a terrible rate. I mean, I know that a hotel in the room would probably hate me for saying that. There are communities that are far worse off. But compared to where we were in previous years over the past boom cycle here, it's way off. So if you look to the left then, the problem this starts to raise is a depressed average daily rate, the amount of money that a hotel is getting from each of those hotel rooms. The problem is that we have basically returned to our 2011 rooms, the occupancy, the amount of people staying overnight, but we have a ton more inventory, close to 1,000 more rooms total in our hotel inventory right now. And all of those hotel rooms, which is good for us, are beautiful. They're all brand new, newly renovated. So you have this problem of the same number of people coming into town with great quality that they can't compete on, so that means the only competition becomes the rate. So with that depressed rate, you can see that it's pushing down below the $111, which is the nation's average. Again, this is a good thing for marketing certain things to get into town, but overall, clearly, we don't want to see this number going down. We want to see it high because that means more people have jobs in our community and more money coming into the hot revenue. But, the list goes on of reasons why we want to see that. So these are numbers we want to see pushing upwards. That being said, to understand how the market's working, you have to understand just how big of a slice of the pie that just got hit. That slice right on the right is called business transient, and that's typically people who are coming into town from a company that brings in employees for whatever reason. It could be trainings, it could be whatever. 49.7% of this entire pie is based on construction, which is largely the oil industry. And a lot of that, a huge, significant portion of that has just evaporated over the last 6 to 10 months. So when you look at this, the pie graph when we see 2015, assuming that we get that report from the state, this is from the state, the governor's office, we're going to be looking at, the other areas taking up a larger portion of that pie, but, a huge missing percentage of that, all those folks that are now staying in hotel rooms if they work for the oil companies or still traveling into town. Were staying in hotel rooms, now have a lot of options, too. They could stay in apartments. We have a ton of apartment options for them. So there's a lot of competition. There's a declining amount of people to take up these rooms. It's not the end of the world. Again, we are returning to the levels that we were at in 2011, but obviously we don't want to see this business disappear. But being realistic about it, too, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of room nights every night that have disappeared. And short of us getting a beach, it's going to be very difficult for us to fill that in right away. But we are looking for ways to do that, and I'll show you some of the positive sides in just a few minutes here. So, where do people come from when they're coming to Victoria? State is from a few different places, to prove it, but this is the easiest way to show it. It's our Google Analytics. Houston is where we get our traffic from, and that corroborates with the data that we got from the 2014, again, the Governor's Office report on tourism. It's Houston, hands down, is where our traffic comes from. Corpus, San Antonio, Austin are all also places that we see people coming into town. Again, a lot of that has to do with any number of things, but Houston, just the sheer size of the community, is probably one of the biggest reasons that we see the most traffic coming from there. Average age of our visitors, again, this is through our website. It does corroborate with some of our other data from other sources, but we see that folks that are interested in Victoria travel here, again, they skew to middle-aged. And finally, our top 10 affinity categories. So these are the folks, what their interests are when they're also looking at Victoria. You're going to always see the first 3 on almost anything that you pull an affinity category report on through Google. But the reason this is kind of particularly useful is it gives us an idea of what these people are interested in when they're also interested in Victoria. It gives you an idea of how to market to them. So, for instance, if they're shutterbugs, you have an idea that these folks might like picturesque places to go, or a thing to market to them would be panoramic views or cool places to take selfies. So this information is useful when you figure out how exactly to market your product. So what are our opportunities? So far you've already seen the barbecue trail from us. We'll continue that. That's a great culinary opportunity for us. And we get a ton of people stopping in our visitor center, picking up the T-shirts, people talking about it all the time still. A lot of great show for that still. You'll see us continuing that. But moving into the future, you're going to see us doing more outdoors. So this includes the fishing, birding, all the water sports like kayaking. We have a lot of just great packages for those to push out there. And you'll see a trail similar to what we did with the barbecue coming out from us soon that focuses initially on the birding, those water sports, and the fishing. That also does, of course, go over into all of these, go over, again, into the meetings market and how we market that. So we'll get to that in a minute. But history is, of course, the big one. No surprise to you folks. Our homes tour is incredibly popular. We'll be refreshing that, including some of the new points of interest that the county is working on. A couple of different opportunities for us there to co-op with the county's historic department and a few other people to really push the history package we have in our region. And then, of course, our events and attractions. I think we all know we have a great art scene here, great event scene here. A lot of communities in our region don't have what we have going on. That is clearly obvious to me the day I moved here. So that is an area that we can continue to capitalize on, all the unique events that we have in town, and those are great reasons to bring people overnight. Then finally, our group travel. So these are folks coming to town, whether it's for the Parks and Recreations tournaments, whether it's for our meeting facilities, for training. There's a lot of different opportunities for us in that area as well to drag people here, and we're seeing success in that as well. I'm going to skip these 2 slides for the sake that I made them too small, so my apologies. But you'll see these right here. We are setting objectives for ourselves, numbers that we want to see us reach. These are, again, just barely within our reach, but they push us hard to get there. They mostly center around, again, our pivot towards digital marketing, so we can track which one of our platforms work well, which ones do not. We love print as well, but just being realistic, it's incredibly expensive and hard to track what you're getting out of it. So for culinary, on this side, what we're interested in doing is achieving 50,000 unique visitors on the Coastal Texas Barbecue Trail microsite through fiscal year 16. This is a significant increase over the total amount of web users we had for all of our platforms previous year, just on that site alone. We're also looking to see our sub-brands push through the social media, so that means pushing out the Coastal Texas Barbecue Trail as well as some of our other brands, and getting 13 million people to see this on basically their home stream when they're on Facebook or Instagram or any number of the other social platforms we use. We want to engage the local residents. The CVB's job, as you know, is to get out there and talk to people to get them here into hotel rooms. That is our job. So when we're doing our job right, you barely ever hear about us here. But the truth is, one of the things that people talk about in Victoria as an area for opportunity is our level of customer service and the experience they get when they go to different places. Does someone at X hotel know about the attraction that's down the street? The only way we're going to truly correct that is by educating our own citizens to know more about what's going on in our community, giving them the pride and getting them to know about what's here in Victoria. That is why we are putting that on there as one of our measurable goals. We want to see a significant portion, 1/4 of our population, to start using our online platforms to learn more about their own community. And then finally, we want to market Boot Fest, which will link into the culinary this year as we add the barbecue street to Boot Fest, which is a competition area of 6 different barbecue joints, local barbecue joints that will be competing for a couple different prizes as a side area of Boot Fest. So where are we going to market?
Tony?
Yes.
Is that what the microsite was?
Yeah, so when I say microsite, you have the core site, which is our explorevictoriatexas.com, and that's a site where it's got our calendar and a little bit of everything. And then the microsite would be Boot Fest. There'll be one for Boot Fest, the Coastal Texas Barbecue Trail. There'll be one for our outdoors trail. They're just little side notes that focus on one specific niche. So where are we going to market? Again, we're going to continue to do some traditional. And what we're looking for is places that are high value, high impact in our target market. So Food and Travel Magazine is a national magazine that's pretty economical for us to advertise in, does a great job of covering our stories, and in fact giving us some other added benefits of writing additional stories on us that we didn't pay for. They're a great partner. So is Houstonia. It's a great magazine, higher quality for higher quality audience in Houston, so it fits our target market right. And then Official Best Of you'll be seeing shortly. That's a rating program that is actually going to be doing a story on I think it's the Food Network or Discover channel, I can't remember, that's going to have a section about us, about a 2-minute video that's about Victoria, seen as being one of the Texas, well actually it's the best of Texas barbecue. Then on the native, so native is kind of a new thing. Native is all about hiding ads inside normal content. I'm sure you guys have either clicked on it before unintentionally or intentionally when you're reading an article in a newspaper, and in line with that article, there's an awesome thing on there about, you're reading, I don't know, an ad about the best cheese sandwiches, and then there's something in there that talks about, the top 10 cheese sandwiches in America or something. Weird example. But the idea is that you hide that top 10 list that you want your customer to find. They'll think it's news, and it actually feeds them like news, but it's truly advertising. This is the new way to advertise. It's to get your customer to eat something, think that it's actually news, when it's in fact us paying to have it there.
Kind of aggravating.
It is. It can be. It very much can be.
It gets me.
It's very effective, and it's good when you do it right. You also don't want to do what you're saying and have one of those ads in there that's completely trickery, and it takes you to a site that has 50 pop-ups or something. Yep. There's some measure of ethics, I guess, involved. I'm not sure if that's the right word. But so we use a couple different platforms for this. This is one of the few ways, well, actually several ways, that we significantly save money for this community. We do a lot of this in-house. Typically, when you're advertising via Facebook, StackAdapt, which is the platform we use for this native advertising, there's a significant upcharge to go through a marketing company. They charge you, obviously, their overhead to do all the ads for you. We do this in-house. That means pretty much 100% of what we put into that marketing something goes to actually having that ad placed. It doesn't go to have that person, in some other office behind a computer, putting it on the computer and making a profit. It's a significant savings we create for the community, and to the point where honestly, the average is somewhere between 40 and 50% is the overhead that most companies charge for doing Facebook, doing StackAdapt, doing native advertising for you. And that's us spending that money directly where it should be. So we're doing that in a few different places. I handed you a sheet that shows examples of native advertising that's actually being done by us on a few different areas. And then finally, social. We're going to continue social, of course, because it's incredibly effective. Social remains one of the largest traffic links to our site. That's where we get people to interact with us. It's still one of the most effective ways to get in front of people. As you can see below, there's a graph there that tells you a little bit about how people actually use social media, use the different platforms that we're talking about. Like we talked about Facebook a minute ago. Folks who are younger than 25 honestly just don't use it as much anymore. They're on the Instagram, kind of Twitter. So you can kind of see where we're really concentrating again on that I guess more mature, middle-aged audience. It's really the age group that we're trying to target with most of our advertising. Folks with expendable income. So for Outdoor and History, we continue this. Again, the concept is we have measurables to get people onto our platforms, get them onto our websites, our microsites. We want to see people learning about Victoria and spending time on our sites, learning about our different products. So with this, 30,000 users for our different platforms. Since we're not launching them throughout the year, we'll be doing them soon. We've got about 30,000 users we're looking for there, 13 million impressions across the board for our social media accounts, and again, some impressions from the locals to learn more about what's in their own backyard. Disposition for this is almost identical to what we did because we're seeing such success with the Culinary Trail. We want to see people finding out about us in the traditional media, which in this case there's a lot of good magazines, newspapers here in the Texas area that talk about the different points of interest, as you can see up there. And then, of course, native still remains a very effective tool, especially in this market, because you can put in stories about true reasons to go birding in Victoria or true reasons to go fishing in our region but stay in Victoria after you've gone fishing, etc. And then, of course, social will remain a very key part to this plan. Events and attractions. So we talked about events and attractions being important. Boot Fest remains very important. We'll see 30,000 users on Boot Fest's microsite this year. That's an increase again. We want to see generation of awareness through the events that exist throughout our community. That means all of our partners, from Bachfest to the events that are put on by the Texas Zoo at Museum of Coastal Bend and soon the Children's Museum. We're working very closely with them on different co-op programs to help leverage the money they're spending. We want to see that the ads that they put into markets, for instance, if the zoo is marketing in Corpus Christi, we want to see that they're getting the most bang out of their buck, and to see if there's ways that we can save money by marketing together in the same location. So how much are we spending on this? This is a bigger bump on the other category, which is everything from billboards, radio, and co-op partnerships with these different organizations. And this is one of the areas that definitely not only generates goodwill, which is important with these partner organizations, but also, again, allows us to put out a very genuine product in the place that they see the most success. And, of course, it helps us. People are coming from far away to go to the zoo. They're staying overnight. Facebook is incredibly key to this area. It's probably the biggest spend of Facebook because that's the easiest way to market events. We just see a massive amount of people interacting with us when we push our events through Facebook, and we hear great success from the events that we push on there. Now, brochures. One of the things that we've been looking at is we have about 5 different brochure pieces. We actually have a 6th that we're talking with the counties, again, the history folks, that they want to do in conjunction with us. We're talking about entirely changing this over. Brochure distribution, it should come as no surprise, is on its way downhill, again, with more and more people moving digital. Still relevant. It's very relevant. But we're looking at different ways, both to cut down that cost right there, as well as to look at, do we really need 5 different brochures when one larger brochure can suffice? It's time to kind of sit down and really reflect on how we're doing our brochure. So that's a little bit open to moving forward to see how we'll work with that one.
Tony?
Sure.
So the Facebook, the social media amount?
Yeah.
How do you, to me, that's a lot of money, and I'm not questioning how it's spent. But I have done a little bit on, in terms of advertising on Facebook. That's a hell of a lot more than I've ever done. Do you have any resources or training on how you design those? I know they're real critical how you do them.
Absolutely.
Not to say that in your office y'all may not already have the expertise there. I don't know.
Sure.
Do you use outside consultants or any?
We actually have Joel in our office, and he does a great job at it. And I say that because he's actually done quite a bit of training through our Texas Tourism Association, actually gone to a certification course basically through I think it was called the college, Tourism College. But what we really do with that is we know where to target our market based on the data of what's coming in, and in terms of web traffic, where we've seen success from, where the nice part about Facebook, as you know, you can see where you're succeeding, where you're not. And we have that historical data from the previous several years, which events work, which ones appeal to people from out of town, which ones don't. So that's what the data is. That's the data we're using to push the proper events, the events that actually have that draw outside of our town.
Are local people that live here on Facebook going to see this material? They're not.
A lot. To be honest with you, because you can target where it goes.
Yeah, right.
And again, typically we want to be spending most of the money getting people from out of town, but there is value in making sure our own residents know what's going on in their own backyard. Because the truth is, if we spend money to have somebody come in from Houston, they stop at the gas station and say, "I'm here for Comic-Con last weekend or something," and the person says, "We don't have a Comic-Con," you just wasted all your money. So we do spend some of that money, part of those promoted posts, but it's usually we'll do actually a separate one and spend less on the local so that we're not, diluting the funds too much that we want to use to get out-of-towners in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's that's just a interesting area. I know it's very powerful. Very powerful.
Well, it has an interesting stat.
I don't see, but I would not see as a resident, because when you create that ad and commit that funding, you define it, you tailor it to a geographic area, so I may not see it.
That's correct. And again, the majority of what you have in front of you, you're probably never seeing because
that's what
it shouldn't be.
Okay.
Which is one of the downsides to what we do. It's hard to show off your work and be proud of it and walk in front of people and talk about it when you don't see it. But the results do show from themselves. If you look at the stats for Q1, which we'll go over in a minute, Facebook is hands down the biggest driver of traffic. And it's significantly, because one of the things proving we're doing it right, it's significantly above Google's average click-through rate in our market, in our type of advertising tourism. So, and we'll go over that in a minute. But any other questions about this? So, groups and meetings. This is a more difficult area for our town. I can tell you an estimate of how many people are honestly going to come into town for the tournaments, the softball tournaments, based on what we've seen over the past year. The problem is we've never really marketed to get meetings into town because we've never really had a package that get them in town. We have the Emerging Tech Center is brand new here, and we're working hard basically to determine what can that truly bring into town. It's not it's hard to compare it to most other meeting spaces. It's not connected to hotels. It's not part of a hotel. It's not a large conference or convention center. So we are working hard, basically putting on the full court press to see which events can we get into town this year if we do it right. And it's an area we're going to have to really address towards the end of this year. Is it an area we need to continue going after? Is it something that's truly going to have a return on investment for us? We already have some hot leads. We had a large convention, the Church of God Worldwide, down here doing a site visit just a couple of months or weeks ago, rather. And they were talking about bringing about 900 room nights to town. And they would fit in our space right. But again, we're up against a lot of hurdles that other communities don't have to go up against. The easiest way to describe it is to tell you about a full-service hotel. When you go to another city, a full-service hotel is a hotel that has 30,000 plus square feet, has several hundred rooms in it, all in one place. They will give away the meeting space for free just to get people to stay in that hotel and to get the money off of food and beverage. We don't have that. We have to charge people a lot of money to stay in our convention spaces around town. Not a lot, but it adds up quick, especially when your competition's free. So what we're determining is whether or not we can truly compete with that, which is in almost every other city around us. Hope is that, yes, the answer is we can find ways to get into that market because it's one of the, quite frankly, most likely sources of traffic into this town to start making up for the loss in oil. So what we're doing right now, we're advertising in the most prominent places and selling in the most prominent places to get these folks into town. We're using CVent, which is a program that meeting planners use to decide a destination to hold a meeting. We're using a company called IMM. They do cold call sales for us, direct call sales for us, quite a few other things. So they take that part off that we don't have a salesperson on staff. They do that hard part. They go out, they know the context. They get us the hot leads, which we follow up on then and try to entice them to come into town on a site visit so they'll bring their convention here. We also go to trade shows. We just recently went to one, in fact, up in Austin to try and generate the leads. And we bring our partners with us. We brought, in fact, the Hilton Garden Inn joined us, the Fairfield Inn joined us, and Tempe from the Emerging Tech Center joined us on that trip as an opportunity to try and sell us as a destination to hold the meeting to the actual meeting planners. On the sports side, Parks and Rec, again, does a great job of bringing the actual tournaments to town and planning them. We work with the planner themselves, Cindy, to actually get the attendees to show up. It's not one thing just to throw a tournament. You got to make sure the teams actually come to town. So we're working with them through direct mailings, through Facebook targeting of their actual email list she has, and then e-blasts to the decision makers, which is typically parents. That's the manager for the team, the coach for the team, to try and entice them to come to our tournaments more. So that is the presentation for the marketing plan. So before I launch into the quarter one results, does anybody want to ask any questions? Yeah.
I'd like to see more, you flesh out, and I know in the past, and maybe call me old-fashioned, we used to support the local reunions in this community, including family and high school reunion. They bring a lot of people, and that's our own local folks putting those things on. I'm just not convinced we're doing enough in the sports area. I don't see any mention about golf, even though we've had some pretty nice golf tournaments. I'm not hearing enough, and I'd like to hear more from Parks about our baseball tournaments and what efforts we're doing there, not only including softball, but Little League, and what we're doing to improve our facilities. We just did a major renovation to our Riverside Park. I haven't gone to actually see a game, but Kobe gave me a tour of the turf out there for the baseball, which is beautiful, and I hope it's going to perform very well. But what's our strategy to market that and go outside this area for potential tournaments? I'm just not seeing any of that there. I think at one time I'd even asked, what are we doing about putting together a FAM tour, a familiarization tour of writers and editors from some of these major magazines that we're even advertising in to come into our community and host them for a few days, tour them, and hopefully they'll go and write significant articles about our community. So those are just some things I'm not seeing in this plan here that maybe you do have, and it's further down in the detail.
Some of that we do, some we don't. I mean, you brought up some good ideas there that we haven't touched on yet, honestly. I'm trying to think of what you started with. The reunion's a great example there. I mean, that is a huge market here. You see that on Memorial Day when you go down to the park, how many people are here. And that's something that also could target the citizens fairly, easily in terms of bring your reunion here, don't take it away to Houston. So, there are opportunities there that we could hit that are probably low-hanging fruit, too. In terms of the golf tournaments, we do work closely. For instance, the Claude Jacobs Invitational is next, 2 weeks from now, I think. We're working closely with Ash over at UHV and Claude Jacobs to work with them sponsorship-wise to help them succeed with their event. We've worked with a couple other Claude Jacobs events. But there's always ways to improve. There's always ways to do more work on that. And I could dig deeper into reunions, come up with a plan for that, and have that presented, and a few other things too.
Just food for thought and something staff and everyone can contemplate.
Great. So then the last part, real quick, would be the Q1 results. We're going to go over the actual results of the work we did. I handed out both a sheet that showed you some of the examples of where our advertising is. It's culinary heavy right now because that's the project we had completed, as well as the magazines that you saw some of the ads in. Throughout this, you'll see that our numbers are quite up significantly in terms of the people we're getting in front of. Web traffic is one of the biggest things I like to push. That's where our content lives. That's where the stories about our destination live, and the instructions on how to actually experience it. We're up significantly year over year on that. Our social reach is significantly up as well, which accommodates the aggressive spending we're doing. And then you can see where the location of the advertisements were. So any questions on the Q1 results?
They look like they're thinking.
All I can say is the receipts don't look good. And that's a hard number we can all look at every month. And how are we going to change that? Turn or flatten it or turn it around? So, I know we're investing a lot in CVB and the activities that y'all are working on. First quarter doesn't look good. So how do we get that turnaround as quick as possible?
It will. Just to follow that up, that is absolutely correct. It's going to take some time to get this turned around. Some significant.
Yeah, and we've engaged, staff is engaged in very conservative budgeting, and we'll weather this. It'll happen again. It'll go up and it'll go down, hotel, motel receipts, and we'll be fine, I think, because we try to prepare as best possible. I just have to say that it's interesting. Mr. Alvarez mentioned the reunions. I remember when those were criticism. In the last century, one of my first positions with the city was on the CVB board. And from that point in I think it was 98, 99 to now, because of the support of this council and the council before and staff, it is absolutely no different. We are, absolutely phenomenal change in the investment we're doing. And we were criticized back in 99 for just being people that passed out brochures to some family reunions. And I'm not necessarily aiming that at the staff at that time. That is not my case. It was a commitment by council to fund it properly. And so I'm starting to see that, and it's just exciting to me to see what you're doing. Great presentation, and Parks and Rec, I know those sports, the hotelers love that guy back there because they bring tournaments in and fill those rooms. And so speaking of that, how your relationship with the hoteliers is good and they support what you do?
Yeah, overall it's clearly a tough time, and turnover is starting to show up, which that's about, usually it starts this time in a cycle like this. You're going to see a big storm of it. But overall, yes, it's a tough time. In fact, I had lunch today with one of the hoteliers, and we were discussing, and, he's been saying it's been rough, and this is the first time he said it's getting ugly. But overall, yes, our relationship is good with them.
That's good. That's important. We want them to succeed. Ultimately, they're a private business, and they made the decision to invest their monies in a hotel here. And I know everyone up here just wants them to succeed. And through this process, you're doing what you can to help with that. So,
two comments they may seem a little off the wall, but first on the park, the Riverside Park. I was out there this weekend. I think UHV had their opening weekend, and not only does the field look fabulous, but also the parking lot. Last year, I remember it had a lot of potholes in it, and it's pretty clear that the city's done some significant maintenance, and it really made it a great facility. So I think that is something we should be proud of and can market. The other thing is we're talking about hot funds, hotel occupancy funds, because we're talking about them coming in from CVB, and last August, I received an email from Vic Caldwell giving me some food for thought on the expenditure of hot funds. I suspect that all of council received it, and so I just kind of want to remind everybody that email came out, and when the time comes that we talk about hot funds, which now we're talking about them being significantly less anyway, but I thought there were some really good ideas in there of a different way to approach them, and not necessarily in terms of bringing them in. We're just going to count on you to do that.
Mr. Halpast had a question.
I had a gentleman approach me, and he is saying that in some communities they try to bundle together deals, a hotel, maybe a discount meal, and some sort of a thing, venue of some sort to try to offer a package. Do we ever do any of that, or is that an effective method of?
It can be effective, and it's more largely on the side of the zoo doing that, or on the hotel itself doing that, simply because we don't want to get in the middle of it. But we have actually approached some of the different organizations. I am blanking on which hotel, but one of the hotels does offer a package for the zoo, offering the ticket for the zoo. I know that the zoo and the Museum of the Coast Bend have in the past done their days or weeks, rather, where they combine their tickets in general, as an attempt to get out in front of larger audiences. It can be. It takes every party to market. And
Just a passing thought. He said I should bring it up, and that some communities do that and with greater or lesser success, I'm sure.
I think sometimes we have to remember Tony's role is to market the event.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I know there's a lot of people that say we ought to be creating, but our job is to market. So he did create the barbecue trail deal, and I think he's working on some other trail ideas.
Good discussion. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's left?
That's it.
Okay. That concludes our business, and we're adjourned. Thank you.